the darkest corner of Lokoja Local Government Area in Kogi State, where the forest grows thick and the ground stays damp even in dry season, there flows a river the elders refuse to name after sunset. By day, they call it Ojuwo, but when darkness falls, they cross themselves and whisper only Omi Iku, the water of death. By daylight, it appears innocent enough. Women pound their clothes against the smooth rocks, their laughter echoing off the water. Children splash in the shallows, their mothers watching with easy smiles. Fishermen cast their nets and pull up fat catfish that feed families for days. The water runs clear and sweet, reflecting the sky like polished glass. But something changes when the sun begins to sink toward the treeline. First, the birds stop singing. Then the insects fall silent. Even the ever-present buzz of mosquitoes dies away until the air itself seems to hold its breath. The water begins to move differently, not flowing downstream as rivers should, but pulsing, as if something enormous breathes beneath its surface. And then comes the sound that has haunted this village for 7 generations, a humming that starts so low you feel it in your bones before you hear it with your ears. It sounds like a woman singing a lullaby, like a mother calling her children home for supper, like a lover whispering sweet promises in the dark. It sounds like everything you've ever wanted to hear. The elders know better. They remember their grandfather's warnings, passed down in hushed voices around dying fires. Never go to Ojuwo when the darkness comes. Never listen to her song. And if you hear your name called from the water, run. Run until your lungs burn and your legs give out, and then keep running. But the young ones never listen. 3 years ago, during the Igala New Yam Festival, the warnings finally proved prophetic in the most horrifying way possible. The festival had been particularly joyous that year. The harvest was bountiful, the palm wine flowed freely, and the masquerades danced until the earth trembled beneath their feet. Among the young men celebrating was Chukwudi, the blacksmith's eldest son, 22 years old, broad-shouldered, with the kind of swagger that made girls giggle and older men shake their heads. He had always been the first to take any dare, the loudest to mock any superstition. Mermaid, he scoffed when old Mammy muttered her warnings as the drummers played. Spirit? A beg, not old people's story be dad. All of una just stay fear ordinary water. He flexed his muscles, palm wine making him bolder than usual. Tonight, I go swim that river make una see say nothing day inside except fish and mud. The crowd cheered and clapped, swept up in his bravado. But Mammy spat 3 times on the ground and made the sign against evil. Dis boy Dawn already give him blood to the river, she whispered to her daughter. Before cock crow tomorrow, we go here weeping for dis village. As midnight approached, Chukwudi stumbled away from the celebration, his head spinning with wine and pride. Behind him, at a careful distance, followed 5 of his friends, curious but cautious, drawn by excitement but held back by ancestral fear. The moon hung overhead like a bleeding eye, casting everything in shades of rust and shadow. They reached the riverbank just as the humming began. It started as barely a whisper, so soft they thought it might be wind in the trees. But there was no wind. The air hung still and heavy, pregnant with the smell of river weeds and something else, something sweet and cloying, like flowers left too long in a tomb. The humming grew clearer, more distinct, unmistakably the voice of a woman singing wordlessly into the night. Chukwudi's friends froze, their laughter dying in their throats. But Chukwudi himself seemed unaffected. Na wetin be dis, he called out, his voice echoing strangely across the water. Abina una day hide for bush day sing? The singing stopped. In the sudden silence, they could hear their own hearts hammering against their ribs. The water had gone perfectly still, reflecting the bloody moon like a mirror. Then, without warning, the surface began to ripple. Not from any wind or current, but from something rising beneath. She emerged slowly, like a nightmare taking shape. First came her hair long, black, streaming with water that never seemed to stop dripping. Then her face, so beautiful it was obscene, with skin that gleamed like wet copper in the moonlight. Her eyes glowed with their own inner fire, pupils elongated like a cat's, fixed unblinkingly on Chukwudi. When she smiled, her teeth were perfect white daggers. But it was her voice that truly trapped him. Chukwudi, she called, and his name on her lips sounded like poetry, like prayer, like the most beautiful thing he had ever heard. None of his friends had told her his name. They had never seen her before in their lives. But she knew him, had always known him, would always know him. Come to me, my beautiful boy. Come and see what waits beneath the water. Behind him, his friends screamed and fled, crashing through the undergrowth like stampeding cattle. But Chukwudi stepped forward as if sleepwalking, his eyes wide and blank. The water around the creature began to glow with a sickly phosphorescence, and they could see her true form, her torso dissolving into a serpentine tail covered in scales that shifted color like oil on water. Yes, she whispered as he waded deeper. Come home to me. Come where the water is warm and the darkness is kind. He walked into the river without hesitation, without fear, without any expression at all on his face. The water closed over his head with barely a ripple. For a moment, there was silence. Then came the screaming. It rose from beneath the water, not just one voice, but many, dozens, maybe hundreds of voices shrieking in harmony. The sound was so terrible that birds fell dead from trees 3 villages away. Windows cracked in houses a mile from the river. Children woke crying in their mother's arms, though they could not say why. The screaming lasted exactly 13 minutes. When dawn broke, Chukwodi's body lay on the riverbank, but what they found was not entirely human anymore. His skin had turned a mottled blue-green, webbed with black veins that pulsed faintly even in death. His eyes had changed, the pupils elongated, the irises a milky white that seemed to shift and swirl when you looked too closely. His mouth was frozen open in a silent scream, and his tongue had grown long and forked, lolling obscenely from between his lips. But worst of all were his fingers. The nails had grown into claws, razor-sharp and curved like fish hooks. And beneath each nail, lodged deep in the quick, were silver scales that writhed and moved of their own accord, as if still alive. The villagers buried him quickly, before the sun reached its peak, but the whispers had already begun. Some said they saw his eyes tracking movement even after death. Others claimed his chest still rose and fell, though no breath came from his lungs. The gravedigger swore that when he threw the first handful of dirt onto the corpse, Chukwudi's mouth moved, forming words in a language that made the man's ears bleed. Within days, it became clear that Chukwudi's death was only the beginning. Young men began disappearing with horrifying regularity. Always at night, always near the river. Sometimes their bodies would appear days later, floating downstream, transformed into something that barely resembled human form. Their skin would be the color of river mud, their hair like wet weeds, their eyes clouded and strange. And always, always, clutched in their hands would be those silver scales, writhing and pulsing with malevolent life. But some bodies never surfaced at all. The first to vanish completely was Emeka, the palm wine tapper's son. He had been returning from the market when he simply wasn't. His footprints led to the water's edge and then stopped, as if he had dissolved into mist. 3 days later, his mother claimed to hear his voice calling from the river, begging her to come and join him. She tried to throw herself into the water before her neighbors restrained her. Then came Obinna, the teacher's nephew. Then Kelechi, who had been promised in marriage to the chief's daughter. One by one, the young men of the village were claimed by something that grew hungrier with each feeding. The elders performed ritual after ritual, sacrifice after sacrifice. They threw white goats into the water, poured palm oil and honey on the surface, burned incense that made the air thick and choking. Nothing worked. If anything, their offerings seemed to strengthen whatever lurked in the depths. That's when little Adaeze began having the dreams. She was only 12, the daughter of the village's most respected palm reader. A quiet child with large eyes and a nervous habit of twisting her hair around her finger. She lived with her mother in a small hut barely 50 yards from the riverbank, close enough that on still nights, they could hear the water lapping against the shore like a giant tongue. The dreams started small. Adaeze would wake gasping, speaking of a beautiful woman who sat by the water, combing her hair with a comb made of human bones. The woman would smile and beckon, whispering promises of treasures beneath the waves, of palaces made of drowned men's ribs, of gardens where water lilies bloomed from eye sockets. "Come," the woman would say in the dreams. "Come and be my daughter. Come and learn the songs that make men's souls leak from their bodies like water from cracked pots." Each night, the dreams grew more vivid, more compelling. Adaeze would sleepwalk to her window, staring out at the moonlit water with blank, yearning eyes. Her mother would find her there at dawn, her nightgown soaked with river water, though she had never left the house. The village elders prescribed stronger medicines, louder prayers, more elaborate protections. They painted symbols on Adaeze's forehead with chicken blood, hung charms made of cowrie shells and iron around her neck, burned sage in every corner of the house. For a few nights, the dream stopped. Then Adaeze disappeared. Her mother woke to find the girls sleeping mad empty, the protective charms scattered on the floor like broken teeth. The window stood open, letting in the sound of distant singing. They searched everywhere, the forest, the farms, the caves in the hills where children sometimes played. They found nothing but wet footprints that led from her bedroom window directly to the water's edge. For 3 months, the village mourned another lost child. Then, on the night of the next New Yam Festival, she came back. The celebration was a subdued affair that year. Too many empty chairs, too many families dressed in mourning white. The drums beat slowly, mournfully, and even the palm wine tasted bitter. Parents clutched their remaining children close, and young men stayed near the fires, refusing to venture even to the latrines alone. It was near midnight when she appeared at the edge of the firelight. "Mama," she called, and her mother's heart nearly stopped. It was Adaeze, unmistakably Adaeze, but wrong in ways that made the mind recoil. She looked exactly as she had 3 months ago, wearing the same yellow dress she had disappeared in, but the fabric was spotless, as if it had been washed in something other than water. Her hair hung in perfectly neat braids, not a strand out of place. Her skin glowed with health, with an inner radiance that was beautiful and terrible. But her eyes had changed. They glowed with the same phosphorescent light they had seen in the creature's gaze. When she blinked, and she blinked far too infrequently, her eyelids moved sideways like a reptile's. And when she smiled at her weeping mother, her teeth had grown into points, each one filed to a razor edge. "My daughter," her mother cried, rushing forward to embrace her. "You've come home. Oh, praise the ancestors, you've come." The embrace lasted only seconds before the mother pulled back, gasping. Adaeze's skin was cold as river stones, and she smelled of deep water and decay, of fish left too long in the sun. Water dripped constantly from her hair and clothes, pooling on the ground in dark puddles that seemed to writhe and move in the flickering firelight. "She sent me back," Adaeze said, her voice carrying an echo as if she spoke from the bottom of a well. "She sent me back to bring her more friends. So many friends. She's lonely down there in the Palace of Bones, with only the dead men to sing to her." The crowd began to back away, instinctively recognizing something fundamentally wrong with the child. But her mother couldn't let go, couldn't stop touching her daughter's face, weeping with joy and terror in equal measure. "Who sent you back, my baby? Who did this to you?" Adaeze's smile widened until it seemed to split her face in half. "Mama Miri, the river mother. She's been waiting so long for children who can swim in the deep places. She showed me such beautiful things, Mama. Cities made of sunken ships. Gardens where the flowers are made of fish scales. And the songs she taught me." Then she began to hum. It was the same melody they had heard from the river, but coming from a child's throat it was infinitely more horrible. The sound seemed to crawl inside their ears and nest there, making their thoughts slow and strange. Several of the young men took involuntary steps toward her, their eyes glazing over. "Stop!" Mama Nkechi shrieked, breaking the spell. "Dat no be human Pekin. Dat na something else wearing her face." But it was too late. The damage was done. Even as the villagers fled, Adaeze's humming continued, echoing through the night like a funeral dirge. And before dawn broke, 3 more boys had vanished, drawn from their beds by voices that sounded like sisters and mothers and wives, calling them to come and play in the deep water. Their bodies were found a week later, but by then they had been changed into something that belonged more to the river than to the land. Their skin had turned translucent, showing the dark blood moving sluggishly through their veins. Gills fluttered wetly along their necks. Their fingers had grown webbed, the skin stretching between them like the wings of bats. And their eyes were gone entirely, replaced by empty sockets that wept a constant stream of river water. The village elder declared the river cursed beyond redemption. They abandoned it entirely, digging wells even though the water came up brackish and bitter. They posted guards to keep people away, especially at night. But it did no good, because Adaeze was still out there. The sightings began almost immediately. She would appear at the edge of the forest just after sunset, still wearing that yellow dress, still looking like the innocent child she had once been. But those who saw her up close reported details that made grown men weep with terror. Her footsteps left pools of river water that never dried. Her hair moved constantly, as if she were still underwater, and things lived in it. Small silver fish that darted between the strands, water weeds that wound around her braids like jewelry. When she spoke, bubbles rose from her mouth, and her breath smelled of drowned men's last gasps. She would stand at the windows of houses where young men slept, tapping on the glass with fingers that had grown too long, too thin, too pale. She would call their names in voices that sounded like every woman they had ever loved, every woman they had ever wanted. And one by one, they would rise from their beds like sleepwalkers, unlock their doors, and follow her into the darkness. Their families would find their rooms empty in the morning, windows standing open, floors soaked with river water. Some left behind pieces of themselves, a fingernail, a tooth, a lock of hair, as if they had been partially dissolved before disappearing entirely. The lucky ones died quickly. The unlucky ones lived long enough to be found. Chioma, who sold vegetables in the market, discovered one of them in her shed 3 weeks after he disappeared. He had been changed into something that might have once been human, his limbs stretched impossibly long and thin, his skin gray and mottled like a fish's belly, his mouth extended into a snout filled with rows of needle teeth. He was trying to dig a hole in the floor with his bare hands, whimpering about needing to find water, needing to go home to Mama. When Chioma screamed, he looked up at her with eyes that had gone completely black. "Please," he whispered in a voice like wind through reeds. "She's calling me. She's so angry I'm late. Help me go home." He died before the sun set, his body dissolving into a puddle of foul-smelling water that seeped into the earth and poisoned Chioma's garden for years afterward. Now, 5 years later, the village has learned to live with their terror. Children are kept indoors after dark. Young men travel in groups and carry charms blessed by every priest, pastor, and traditional healer for 100 miles. The river is avoided entirely. They have built their new wells on the opposite side of the village, as far from the water as possible. But still, on certain nights when the moon is dark and the air is still, you can hear her singing. It drifts across the village like smoke, that sweet, terrible humming that makes your bones ache with longing. Parents wake to find their children sitting by windows, staring out into the darkness with hungry eyes. Husbands discover their wives sleepwalking toward the abandoned riverbank, murmuring about beautiful palaces beneath the water. And sometimes, if you are foolish enough to walk near the river on such nights, you will see her. She sits on the water's surface as if it were solid ground, her yellow dress spread around her like flower petals. Her hair floats in a dark cloud, and her eyes glow with the light of drowned stars. In her hands, she holds a comb made from the spine of some massive fish, and she draws it through her hair in slow, hypnotic strokes. But it's not just her hair she's combing. Look closer, and you'll see that tangled in those black strands are other things. Human hair of every color and texture, ribbons and cloths and jewelry torn from the bodies of the drowned. And fingers, dozens of pale, bloodless fingers still adorned with rings, still twitching weakly as they try to claw their way free from her terrible hair. She will notice you watching. She always does. And when she looks up, smiling with her mouth full of shark teeth, she will speak your name in a voice like honey poured over broken glass. She knows everyone's name. She has always known your name. She whispered it to your mother while you were still in the womb, marking you as her own. Come closer, she will call. Come and see what I've made for you. Come and learn the songs of the deep places. Come and be beautiful forever. Your legs will want to obey. Your heart will want to please her. Every instinct will scream at you to walk into that dark water and let it close over your head like a lover's embrace. But if you have any wisdom left, any shred of the survival instinct that has kept humanity alive since the first days, you will turn and run. Run as fast as your legs can carry you. Run until your lungs burn and your side cramps and your legs give out beneath you. And then keep running, because she is patient. She has waited centuries for the right collection of souls, the perfect chorus of voices to sing her songs. A few more years means nothing to her. She will wait for you to grow careless, to forget the warnings, to think yourself safe. And when that night comes, when you finally let your guard down and venture too close to the water's edge, she will be there, smiling her terrible smile, combing her hair full of dead men's fingers. She will call your name, and you will answer. Deep beneath the water of River Ojuwo, in a palace built from the ribcages of the drowned, she keeps her collection of beautiful young men. They sit in neat rows on benches made of femurs, their empty eye sockets weeping constant streams, their mouths open in eternal song. Their voices blend together in harmonies that would drive the living mad with longing, singing praises to their mistress, begging for the privilege of serving her forever. Sometimes, on the darkest nights, their voices can be heard rising from the water, not just the humming that lures the living to their doom, but words. Please. Warnings. Don't come, they sing. Don't listen. She is beautiful. She is terrible. She is everything you have ever wanted and everything you should fear. Run. Run while you still can. Run while you still remember your own name. But their warning comes too late, always too late. Because by the time you hear their desperate chorus, you are already walking toward the water's edge. You are already smiling at the beautiful woman who rises to meet you. You are already opening your mouth to join their song. And in the morning, the villagers will find your clothes folded neatly on the riverbank. Your family will weep and search and hope against hope that you might somehow return. They will perform rituals and make sacrifices and pray to every god they know. But you will not come back. You will be far beneath the dark water, in the palace of bones, learning new songs in a voice that is no longer quite your own. You will sit with the others in their neat rows, your eye sockets streaming, your mouth open in endless praise of your beautiful, terrible mistress. And when the next young fool ventures too close to the water's edge, when the next voice calls out in foolish bravado, you will add your voice to the chorus. You will help her call their name. You will help lure them down into the depths where the water is warm and the darkness is kind and the singing never ever stops. This is the true story of River Ojuwo, as told by those who have survived its calling. Believe it or dismiss it at your will. But remember this, somewhere in Kogi State, in the darkest corner of Lokoja Local Government Area, the river still flows. The woman still sings. And she is always, always hungry for new voices to join her choir. If you ever find yourself near those waters when the sun goes down, when the birds fall silent and the air grows still, remember this story. Remember the warnings. And whatever you do, whatever beautiful voice calls your name from the darkness, don't answer. Because some invitations, once accepted, can never be declined.